So, as it stands, the United States has recorded 66,000 deaths from COVID-19, which is the highest official rate in the world. It may be that China's true figure is higher, but at least on in official terms, that is the highest rate in the world. Um, I made a video a while back about the so-called gridlock protests. I made a few videos about that actually because it was very notable the sort of things that were going on, particularly in Michigan, but it spread to other states as well. And the disgraceful way that Trump has advocated and endorsed domestic insurrection. I don't think that's ever happened in American history, like I say, for a sitting president to endorse that sort of insurrection against domestic opposition. And incidentally, he was only aiming that at Democratic governors, even though some Republican governors have also brought in similar restrictions. Anyway, this has escalated. Apparently, in Lansing, the state capital of Michigan, armed protesters, or at least some of them were armed, barged into the state capitol building. Um, and yeah, it's pretty clear that their intention was to try and intimidate the legislators in there. There were female legislators wearing bulletproof vests under their clothing. And they've reported that they don't mind admitting they were scared. Now, in a country that has a history of political assassinations, it's really not far-fetched to think that this could get out of hand and people could get seriously hurt. And my challenge to these guys is, how the hell is this a peaceful protest? How can you call this a peaceful protest? You don't like the lockdown? You're worried about your jobs? I get that. A lot of people are worried about the financial side of this. I can understand concern about that. I can understand anger at perceived double standards. For example, Governor Pritzker of Illinois, his wife was seen traveling apparently, and when asked about that, he gave a very flippant response. Politicians need to be very careful not to be displaying double standards on this. But there is no excuse. I don't know how anyone can even try to justify what these militia types are doing. And it's not unfair to say that if these were black guys, if a bunch of black guys turned up to a government building that way, armed, they would be seen as a gang. They would be seen as no different from the Bloods or the Crips. So why do white Trump supporters get a free pass? There is a real issue with that. I mean, I'm not surprised by it because there is a long history in the United States of militias acting this way, basically thinking they could do whatever they want. But they have no right to claim this is a peaceful protest. And if they were not covered in their balaclavas and their military style fatigues, and if they actually, showed their faces, um, and maybe they will, maybe some of them are proud of it. But I have to say, the report I've just seen, there was one very brave man who confronted them. He said, you don't have a civil, you don't bring a civil argument by bringing firearms. If you're bringing firearms, the intention is one intention only, to intimidate. And they can say, oh, they're not going to use them. That's not the point. The point is to intimidate. If you have a bunch of, well-built guys who are carrying semi-automatic weapons with military fatigues, with balaclavas, some of them, with face masks, not for the virus, but because they want to look like big, tough army guys. That the whole image of these militias is about intimidation. They're basically like paramilitaries, and it just disgusts me that they think it's an acceptable way to behave, and they think it's got anything to do with freedom. How is intimidating other people? Because it isn't just legislators that are intimidating. They will do this to anyone. They'll do it to reporters. They will go up to fellow citizens this way. So the whole aura is intimidation. They're thugs. I'm calling them thugs until they prove otherwise. The whole good guy with a gun rhetoric, well, Timothy McVeigh was very much of this school of thought because he was of the opinion that the Waco atrocity, there's still, the information on that is still debated as to exactly what happened. But suffice to say, Timothy McVeigh took his atrocity, 168 men, women, and children slaughtered, to be justified because of this extreme libertarian mindset the Second Amendment militias have. And Timothy McVeigh was very much of that school of thought. He was a gun nut. He was a Gulf War veteran, but he took it to a whole new level. And it's a very, very dangerous thing. And it once again reiterates the situation we have in the United States. Canada today, the Trudeau government just passed sweeping legislation banning a lot of AR-15 weapons. Canada had been a bit more relaxed than some other countries, not as much as the United States, but more so than, for example, the UK. Now, after the Nova Scotia mass shooting a few weeks ago, I remember an American friend saying, somehow I get the feeling the Canadians will act on this, and that's exactly what they've done. They've had the worst mass shooting ever recorded, and they've acted on it. They've recognized this is a problem, they needed to act on it. After the Dunblane massacre here in the UK, the major government in the UK banned handguns, and as a result, we've only had one mass shooting since then, and that was in a rural area in Cumbria, 2010. I mention that because rural areas will have higher gun ownership. In Australia, after the Hobart Massacre in 1996, Australia hasn't seen that scale of atrocity since. Now, the point with this is not that gun control stops gun violence. I've never claimed that, and I don't believe any gun control advocate has. But these militias are liars. They say that gun control doesn't make a difference. It does. But it's more than that. They actually believe they have a right to go around like this. I'm not talking about regular Americans who have firearms to protect their family or because they have a hunting license. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these militias. They're thugs, and they should be treated with the same contempt as any gang, because really that's what they are. Big difference, though, is that the President of the United States is actually endorsing these people, as is Fox News, both to their shame. Shame on Donald Trump, shame on Fox News. If any governor ends up assassinated, their blood will be on the hands of Donald Trump and Fox News for endorsing this. And it's a possibility because the strength of anger is very strong right now. And, these militias are convinced their freedom's been taken away. They cannot rationalize that these are measures that these governors don't want to take. I mean, how does it help them politically to have job losses? It's not politically a good thing for them. So they just have this in their idea that these tyrants, want to do it just for the hell of it. They're doing it because there's a worldwide pandemic going on, and this is something that's being done around the world. Nobody likes the lockdown. I don't particularly like the lockdown. But even if we had more of those gun laws in this country, I'm not going to get a gun and storm down to my civic centre, which is the equivalent, and try and intimidate local legislators. So I'm disgusted by their behaviour, and it's just a sad indictment of, they say it's a lack of freedom. It shows how much freedom they have, that they can actually have. I would say they've got too much freedom. They shouldn't be allowed to do this. They shouldn't be allowed to legally intimidate legislators in this way. It's not a case of having too little freedom, it's a case of having too lax um, personal responsibility. Anyway, that's my thoughts. So if you are one of these guys, you're brandishing your weapon and you're saying, oh, but it's because they're taking away our rights. A few questions. Number one, how does it help these governors politically? Okay, so you're saying it's about them being tyrants. Well, how does it actually help them? They have to go up for re-election. You can vote them out of office. So how does it help them? It's a flawed logic. And secondly, how can you claim these are peaceful protests? How can you claim that brandishing a firearm, trying to barge into someone's office is peaceful? It's not. Just be honest with yourselves. You're trying to intimidate. At least man up and and admit that, because that is what you're trying to do. You know, you're big tough guys. Go on, admit it. Admit you want to intimidate your opponents. At least do that.